We stay with family relations. In a world where we cannot be sure how climate change, artificial intelligence, or new medicine is going to determine the future, it is hard already for parents to give advice to their children what to study or which profession to pick. Who would have guessed 20 years ago that not only the work in automobile or printing factories could be done by robots, could be replaced by them, and now it is some of the work of lawyers, doctors, journalists by artificial intelligence. One of the most famous scientific journalists in Germany, the Luxembourgian Indian Ranga Yogeshwar, he said in a discussion earlier that the development of new technological generations outruns the new human generations being born. So what does that mean for Ranga's grandson, Emil? How is Emil's world going to look like in the future? That is Ranga going to explore in his presentation now. Very nice to meet you, Ranga.
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you.
In your presentation, you are not just relying on arguments, but you want to back it up with survey data. And all of us who are watching can put our opinion in there. Can you please explain what Mentimeter is and why you like to use it?
Sure, I can do that straight away. So everybody who has a smartphone, not only in the lovely Weimar area, I'll just sort of switch, and you can see following, you take your smartphone, put on the camera, and you can scan the QR code, or you well, use your browser, go to www.menti.com, and then you're asked for a code. The code for this session is 6943787. So it's very easy to use, and I have a few questions because I think so in these time of online discussions, it's important to well, have some interaction. I don't know if you switch it to a full screen. I can do that myself if you want. So I'll just park the code so that everybody can, well, get in, and later I will ask some questions. Fine for you?
Great. Thank you.
So I can start? Is that okay? Is that fine?
Yes, yes, please. We're looking very forward.
Okay, so once again, welcome. I'm very happy to be here. Today we have about 20 minutes, so it's short to speak of an entire generation. And I would like to speak about Emil's world. Now, first of all, you already heard Emil has something to do with my family, with my grandson. Well, if you look at Corona stories, my Corona story was quite interesting as a keynote speaker. Last year, suddenly all the, well, keynotes were canceled, no public appearances and so on allowed. On the other side, well, I did something else. I set up an own studio, so that was fine. But the real big surprise was him. This is an actual picture of Emil. He was born in January 2020. And it is, for me, the first grandson. And it's quite interesting because things happen. You know, you hold this small child in your arm and you realize, for example, if you look at statistics, if Emil is going to turn 80, which I hope he will live through the next century. So when we are speaking about a future, it's a future for me, but it's going to be his present life, things which are going to occur. And the other thing which came to my mind was the fact that for Emil, for example, it is very normal to speak to a machine. We all have these home assistants. So you realize this is going to be a very special generation. Now, first of all, as a grandfather, what I did was naturally, I wanted to give him a present and, well, a small horse. First of all, I planned it naturally with all the tools today, so in CAD, then in 3D printing. Then I set it up, and this is my, well, Corona story, and at the end you can see the rocking horse works. But
unbelievable.
Yes, the interesting question is what is happening? And here are two pictures. This is myself. I was born in 1959 and you have Emil born in 2020. So the interesting question is going to be, what is change going to do? And I would like to start just with very few questions in the Mentimeter. So once again, for all those who didn't follow our small chat at the beginning, if you have a smartphone, just take it, scan in the QR code, and you'll have a website, or you can also go on a browser, and the address is www.menti.com, and the code is 69437887. And I have a first question which I would like to share with you. And my first question is the following, which is just, a test question so that we all see that it works. What is your current vaccination status? So are you already vaccinated? Did you get one shot, or are you already fully vaccinated? And well, you can see interaction works, so we can see the results, and I don't know how many people are from Germany or from else in the world, but this is about representative of a status, at least in Germany, not in other countries. Now, this was the first question, and you can see we have about 30 participants who join. The number is going to go up, but as I have a little time, I will proceed to the next question. And my next question is, during the corona crisis, we saw a huge change. And my question is going to be, what is going to happen after the pandemic? So will we return to a business as usual? Or do you say, well, we have a few changes which will remain? Or do you say, no, we have seen within corona that we have a huge transformation, and this is going to continue, so we will see change going on. And this again is quite representative of many talks I give, where you can see, yes, things are going on, so we are seeing progress, and this is not something special. This is something where we all realize that the pandemic is, well, changing our life. Now, if we look into detail, we can see that there have been huge transformations. So if we speak of generations, and my belief is that innovation shapes these generations, we can see it, and I'll give you just two small examples. One is the telephone. I remember in my childhood, well, there was no real good telephone line. I spent my childhood in India, so communication on a very elementary scale was already quite difficult. But if you compare it, and I'll just give you two figures, if you take a mobile phone from today, well, I have, naturally as a scientist, one of the latest iPhones. The memory in this iPhone is 500 gigabytes. Now, I show you the picture. Why? Because if you have a close look, you will see that in the background you have a computer center. This was in the days where I studied, and you can see on the right corner, these were the storage devices, clumsy, big, well, boxes looking a bit like washing machines. And they had a storage capacity of 500 megabytes. So what we really have to realize is that nowadays, in your trousers, you are carrying a device with a storage capacity which is bigger than the entire computer center of my studying days, which means we have a huge effect. And this is not only true for storage capacity, this is also true for speed. And here again, I just want to show you these two figures so that you realize things are really moving fast. On the left side, you can see an old picture of myself with a beard. My wife always says, don't show it, because I looked awkward. And for some weeks, I even held the record here in Europe of high-speed computing with the Cray XMP. The computer cost in those days $15 million. And I was able to, well, program a computing power of 200 million floating operations per second. This is a speed. And now just imagine you can buy computers or even an iPhone, and this iPhone or computer has more power than all the supercomputers of the old days. So in other words, we are there in a society where technology is really changing a lot. And I will jump back to the lovely city of Weimar. And for all those who don't know Weimar, it's awesome. It has a fantastic library. And if you just imagine that the contents of all these books you see here, this is the modern part of the library, you could store it on today's smartphone. So we are literally living in a time where information has changed in a dramatic way. And speaking of generations, if you are in Weimar, if you visit the library, you will still see 5 laws of library science. And these are the laws of my Indian grandfather. So I really have a close link to Weimar, because my grandfather from India, he was a library scientist, formulated them, and one, you can have a look at it if you are at the premise, and one is the library is a growing organism. Now, in that old generation, the dissemination of information was important. My grandfather invented worldwide for the first time the so-called library on wheels. So he said, well, in his generation, books were hard to grasp, and you have to bring the books to the people. That was his credo. And we are living that right now. So we are living for the first time historically in a world which is interconnected, and we don't realize that this means we have a two-way alley. So in every country, people having an internet connection are connected, have all the informations available. So in other words, the small girl in Bombay, if she has an internet connection, has the same amount of information than the small boy in Berlin. And this is really a huge change within generations. If I look at my childhood in India, well, the access to information has really transformed the world. And related with that, we talked a bit about that in the prior discussion, is a changing of grammar. So the old generation still was top down. It was, you know, the teacher and the pupil. It was the producer and the consumer. It was the TV or radio station and the viewer. I mean, even the term viewer means these are things which are passive. And right now we are seeing a breakup. The grammar of communication of generations is totally changing in a way which is restructuring our society. And if we speak of Generation Emil, it is normal for him to speak with a machine. And we all know we have these lovely gadgets. We have Alexa, Siri, and so on. And this could mean that we are entering a new phase within a global society, which could be something like a post-text society. So this gets to the roots of the way we think. And I think so it's very important to realize that the coming generation will think, will argue in a totally different way as the old generation did it. And we can see it in many things which are changing. I mean, just think of, well, online shopping, which has changed in a dramatic way in the last year, especially with the pandemic. Think of the deeper question of the 9-to-5 job. In my work biography, I used to commute, and the interesting question is, will this be true for the next generation? So will we still go to work? Will we have this sort of opening up of the layers where in the future generations people do not sort of, well, separate work on one side and private sphere on the other side, but things are merging. And you're seeing that this has a lot of consequences on the quality, for example, of cities, which might look different, or the quality of, well, companies. I mean, how in the next generation will you generate a feeling of a company which is together? Now, if you look at technology, we see really dramatic aspects, and I want to give you one example because I want to dive into the change in medicine within this coming generation. And I once again would like to jump back to my own childhood. I was born, as I said, in 1959, my father from India, my mother from Luxembourg, and I was born as a twin. Now, the interesting aspect was in those days there was no ultrasound, nothing like that, and nobody knew that they were twins. I mean, my mother had some sort of a feeling, but the bill of the hospital even notes, well, the cost, and my brother was the first one to come, so it was baby Pierre and then a son, plus 15% for unforeseen. That was me. So can you imagine, this was the status then. If I look at Emil, and nowadays we have totally different technologies of looking in, of knowing in advance. All the old questions we used to pose, like, is it a boy or is it a girl, are gone. And if we then dive into the next chapter, which is already starting, we are entering the field, and I think so this is really going to be a big game changer for the next generations. It's going to be the field of artificial intelligence. And you can see it already because we see here learning devices, digital neural networks, which do not exactly copy our brain, but what they do is, with the help of the huge computer power, we are nowadays able to simulate the brain. And we can see that here things are changing in a dramatic way. We can simulate neurons and we build up learning systems. And this is important because we are seeing for the first time in humanity machines which are starting to learn. So as a society, we are being confronted not only with generations in the human sense, but also with generations in the sense of technology. And these machines are able to learn. Here is an example of X-rays. And after the learning process, they are able to give you a diagnosis. So I had a look at such applications in Stanford, and it's very easy to use. You use your smartphone, you scan the picture, and just a few seconds later, you get a diagnosis. And the interesting thing is the people developing that are the young generation. So we are confronted with change where, if you look at this young guy, Pranav Rajpurkar, who at Stanford developed the system, he's about the age of my son, and he's changing the entire way, well, doctors will work in the future. There are other examples, like here is Max Little. He does research at the MIT, now he is at the Aston University. And again, you can see the changes. He uses the sensors within the smartphone to give a prediction with the help of his algorithms if a person is catching Parkinson. So he's able to diagnose the precursor state of Parkinson. And if you speak to these specialists, you realize that the development is going to go much faster. So we'll have an entire new medicine. Will be able to scan our body in a way which is unforeseeable with technology. And I have a question because I spoke to many of these scientists and they said, well, listen, Ranga, in the future, you know when you were born, okay, you know your birth date, but we could predict in the years coming the year you will die. And I would like to know from you if you want to know that. So would you like to know the year of your death? Because these are going to be the deeper questions generation Emil is going to ask himself. And yeah, you can see the votings are entering. And what I find so interesting is I have the feeling that this number is going to change. So right now you can see a very strong majority saying, no, we don't want to know it. But there are already a few who say, why not? And I think so this vision of a future generation is going to be a vision where technology is going to change the way we look upon our life. Because I think so once you know the year you die, this is going to, in a disruptive way, change your entire life. So these are the open questions we have. Now, as time is short, I don't know, I have to just cross-check. I still have, I think, 5 minutes, correct? If not, please interrupt me. I would like to stress out one aspect which is quite important, which is this new generation will be confronted with prediction, as I mentioned, and this is happening in an arena of applications. So you can see it within the news, the grammar we look upon. We could discuss long about that. But the new generation will ask, is prediction really something which is going to form the generations worldwide? So will we at the end up in a situation where well, prediction means that we even could question our free will, and this could mean that at the end we end up in a society where technology takes over. So it could be the last human generation in a certain way, and the question we have to ask is, well, being human. Now, there is one challenge, and I think so it's very important to mention it, of the future generation, and this is the challenges, the global challenges they are going to face. One major challenge, we all know it, is going to be climate change. So this coming generation is living in a world where they have to cope with these problems. They have to cope with the question of what we call sustainable development goals, and we really have to be able to succeed. If I do it on a personal way, as a science journalist, I was, exposed to many animals which are very seldom, and I always ask myself, will my grandson and his generation still see these animals? And I'll just give you one example if you listen. This is a bird which already... Well, the Kawaio, I hope I pronounce this correctly, which already left us. So we are living in a world where I think so we have to speak in a much more aggressive way about ethics. We have to, and the next generation is going to question the way we live. So is it really the grammar of commerce which is there, knowing that we need a world where, well, the poor must be looked upon. And I think so the most important aspect in that is this is not going to be done by these guys. So we need generation change. We need people, young people, who have to shape and form their own world. And, well, the biggest problem, as John Maynard Keynes put it, is not to let people accept new ideas, but to let them forget the old ones. And it is our duty, I think so, as a generation, that we have to have discussions on that topic, and we definitely have to, well, develop something which I call global empathy. Now, at the end, I think so, this coming generation is going to re-ask very elementary questions. And one is going to be, what are the goals? Where do we strive? And I think so we as the old generation must forget our way of thinking. There are new foci which are there, like, for example, the ranking of happiness, which is, I think, so much more important. But I remain positive. And I believe that we are facing a new generation which is going to be gorgeous. And I would like to end with my grandson, Emil, who is going to pinch my nose. If we don't take care of this planet, if we don't make peace with the world. And I think so this sort of shows the challenges of the coming generation and, well, the change we have to face. Okay, unfortunately, I don't have enough time. I could go on, but I know you have a tight schedule.
I hope you are going to come back another time. Thank you very much, Ranga. But I have two quick questions.
Okay,
is the world Emil is going to live in, is that one where you would like to live in as well? Because I am influenced by science fiction literature, and that never really painted a bright, beautiful future.
I totally agree. And you know what? Why not ask our audience? I could just sort of poke in this question and ask all of you, are you looking forward to your future or are you afraid of it? So last time...
I'm going to say I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, there are some votes coming in, and what you can see is,
some other people don't know. And I have another quick question, because in the introduction I was talking about the troubles parents have advising their children which profession to pick or what to study. What are you going to advise Emil?
Well, first of all, I gave the advice to my children. I have 4 children, and I was very clear-cut.
But that was in another time.
Okay, but I think so. Listen to your heart. I think so. That's the elementary things. What should you study? This is your life, and this is, I think, so true for every generation. Listen to your own heart and do things which are fulfilling for you. Don't try to follow the laws of a society, the reasoning of parents, but listen to yourself. And I think so this is so important, because within a generation you grow older, and in my case, I still get up in the morning with a gorgeous feeling because I love what I do. And I think so that is so important, and I think so that is going to be true also in the upcoming generations.
And that is so nice to hear scientists advise somebody to listen to their hearts. Thank you very much, Ranga. Have a nice day.
Take care. Thank you.
You too.